Welcome to the second part of the podcast with Capt GR Gopinath, the visionary founder of India's first low-cost airline, Air Deccan, that soared to great heights before the business nosedived. Welcome again, Gopi. I remember when you made headlines for placing an astounding order for 60 Airbus and 10 ATR planes for Air Deccan.
30.
30. Okay. I saw the red carpet treatment that you got in Toulouse way back about 18, 19 years ago, I think.
Yeah. 2004, I think. Yeah.
How do you feel about the recent orders by Indigo for 500 planes and Air India for 470 planes? What is your reaction when you see this news?
There are two, three impressions that come to me. One is, I remember when I went to Toulouse the first time, I actually decided to wind up ITR. In the previous board meeting before I went, they had taken a decision that they were getting no orders and they wanted to shut it. And I just landed there. I had no big funds. I had a small helicopter company. And from out of the blue, I went there and told the ATR. And I gave a small talk there. And I said, whatever India may not have, it has a market. There's a new India. And if you order 1,000 aircrafts, India will still be short. And so I said, I want to take some ATRs. So after that meeting, they decided, internally, not to shut the company. And I ordered 30 ATRs and firm orders and 30 on options, so 60. Options means that you have an option to add 30 more. And that sort of revived ATR from shutting it down. And I took delivery of almost 25 ATRs before I sold the airline to Malia. And then within 6 months after the launch of the airline in August 2003, I did an inaugural flight from Bangalore to Hubli. For the first time, we put Hubli on the air map. And then I also added, 30 other cities across India. My vision was twofold. One was the making the airline affordable to the common man. But it was also not the common man between Bombay and Delhi or Delhi-Bangalore. I also said I must link all the unconnected towns of India. That's what I set out to do. I said, unless the regional towns deep in the bowels of the country, unless they are connected to the metros, the investments will not go there to those rural towns. And if you really want to have integration of the country, it's not only through just the road and rail and also the internet, but airlines subsume geography, knit the country together. So there's no money that you can put on that. So I started linking all these small towns across India: Rajmundry, Vijayawada, Tirunelveli, Jabalpur, Gwalior, Dharamshala, a whole lot of them. And the way I discovered that was once, S.M. Krishna, who used to regularly use my helicopter. And he himself called me. I said, normally his secretary would speak. He said, Gopi, I said, I want to go to this temple near Palani. But the helicopter is, it's very noisy and it takes 2.5 hours. Can I go by plane? And then I said, sir, give me some time. And I told one of my pilots to find out which is the nearest airfield. And he came to me and said, there is an airfield in Madurai. But then again, you have to go by plane to Madurai, and from Madurai again, you have to go by helicopter to the Palani. You would lose everything. So then he came back again after some time and he said, there is a small airstrip there near Palani. In the map, it is shown there. I said, go and check it out. So he went there. He took his GPS and he took an engineer with him and he went there. And he called me. He said, sir, I'm on the airfield. There's some cows grazing here. It belongs to a textile company. I can land here if I just remove those termite mounds and clear the grass and stubble. I said, just go and talk to the owner of that textile mill. It was an old British mill which somebody had taken over in Tamil Nadu. And he was very happy. He said, I'll be delighted. And then we flew Krishna to that place. And then I discovered through my pilot that we had 500 airstrips across the country, many going back to the Second World War time, which the British used to use, some are in the private sector. And that's when this idea came to me that I must connect all these small towns. And so when I went and made that speech in the ATR, that fired them up. And then within 6 months, I ordered 60 Airbuses. So I took delivery of 25 Airbus and 25 ETR. And we had about around 50 aircraft before I merged the airline with Kingfisher of Vijay Mallya. But the thought that came to me when I saw that newspaper was, of course, it was a chronicle foretold, in a sense by me. But I also felt that, the two airlines have grown, that is Indigo and Tata's, by merger and various things. The airline sector itself has not grown because there was exit of Kingfisher, exit of Jet Airways, exit of another Prime Air. Then Spice is already hit at 100 aircraft, just sent back 50. Air India has shrunk. Go Air has this one. So if you look at net, and Air India had not grown for 10 years. Indigo grew, but the consumer base has not expanded.
That's curious, Gopi, you say that, because I read recently that there are over 4.5 lakh passengers and 3,000 flights each day in India.
Yeah, that is nothing much to boast of for a country like ours, because pre-COVID figures, as per the DGCA, in 2019, we were flying 220 million domestic passengers and about 60 million foreign passengers. So 260 million pre-COVID, and we have still not crossed that, or we have just touched it. So 2019 figures is about 220 million, actually, to be precise. And even today, it is hovering around that. So 220 million, what they call in airline slang is not 250 million different bumps on seats. There are about 40 to 50 million people who are doing frequent traveling. Many of them travel 5 times a month, 10 times a month, especially corporate companies. And some travel once in 6 months. The small and medium enterprises may travel 3 times a year, and some travel once a year. So in real terms, 40 million to 50 million different passengers traveling means that less than 4% of the Indian population is traveling by air. And in China, for example, it is 650 million tickets which are sold, which is half the population. In Norway, for example, for a population of 4 million, 20 million seats are sold. Europe, which is the size of India, and also like India, different countries and different states here, you have about 1 billion tickets, 1.1 billion tickets sold for a population of 300 million. And in the US, for a population of 350 million, you have again close to 1 billion tickets. That means 4 times the population. So from that point of view, it is an anomaly. I think aviation is in a time warp. While all sectors have grown, the airline sector has not grown commensurate with for example, the sectors of motorcycles and even automobiles.
Captain Gopi, what according to you are the reasons for the lack of growth of the airline sector in India?
I think the first is, I think it's because of our policies. Though Mr. Modi very clearly said Congress introduces new laws and we dismantle old laws. And he has dismantled quite a few old laws. But the aviation is operating under Aircraft Act of 1934 and Aircraft Rules of 1937, which is still the Mother Act, under which new rules and guidelines are given, but it is subject to the Mother Act. And in 1934, when this act was made by the British, the helicopter was not invented, the jet engine was not invented. So we are still following the same rules. It's very restrictive. And apart from delaying expansion, it also has increased cost compared to the Western countries. There are a lot of unnecessary bureaucracies. Of course, no regulator anywhere in the world is easy. But I think probably the Indian regulators are the most difficult. You have to have safety. But as someone said, if you want to discover new lands, you have to sail the high seas. The ship is safest in the harbor.
Is focusing on more safety a bad thing?
It's like saying, let's have seat belts in auto rickshaws, for example. Of course, it is safer. But will it expand the market? No. So you would have a balance. We did not have seat belts in any car when we had ambassadors about 40 years ago in the Fiat car. And we did not even have seat belts on the Maruti 800 when it was introduced into India because they wanted to make it affordable so that more people can. So as the economy matured, The per capita income rose. Now you have got all sort of fancy cars. It's the same thing. They have loaded the aircraft with so many unwanted things, apart from the rules and regulations of maintenance, including the training for pilots, for example. They're all heavily over-regimented. And over-regimentation is not only bad for the cost, it is also not good for maintenance. Aircrafts are not safe because you over-maintain them. On the other hand, they are more unsafe if you over-maintain them. You have to go exactly as per the manufacturer's regulations. And the second, I think we need more competition, not only amongst the airlines. For that, you need to have lower entry barriers. I wouldn't have been able to start an airline if we had huge entry barriers. Naresh Goyal of Jet Airways, who unfortunately is now grounded, he was an obscure travel agent, and he cobbled up some money and started the airline. And he probably ran the best airline in the world during his time. It's a different matter. He went astray or lost his focus, and he's in trouble now. So you need lower entry barriers. That's how Narayana Murthy came up, or Kiran Mazumdar came up, or Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates. None of them would have been able to succeed in their venture if money was the criteria. And as we have seen, people with big money have never achieved much in life, barring a few exceptions here and there. It is high aspirations and low resources, big dreams and small resources is always the key to success, because entrepreneurs destabilize the status quo. They break cartels. They create new markets. They create a new satisfaction which did not exist before. And so it's very important to ensure that you completely make the entry level so easy that even an auto rickshaw fellow should be able to start an airline. In fact, in Indonesia, where I went and where I attended a conference, there is a lady there who used to be, Indonesia, for example, has 57 scheduled airlines. Some with one aircraft, single engine, some with two aircraft, there's no barrier there. Anybody can start.
A country as small as that.
As small as that. The big population, but as small as that. They've got 57 airlines. There's one airline which has been having 300 aircrafts, Lion Air, for the last 10 years. And so this lady was a fisherwoman, and she used to sell fish. And she found that the fish that would come was usually losing its freshness by the time she received it. That's when she got an idea and took a single engine aircraft and started an airline to get fish for herself. Then when I met her about 15 years ago, she had about 15 aircraft, single engine aircraft transporting fish. So you need to have, like anybody can get a thela and start a truck, like in Punjab. In a similar spirit, you should allow airlines to flourish. Then only this country, you'll have common people to fly. So the government should ask, what is it that we need to do to make more common people fly? If you ask that, then it will give you answers, what incentives to give and what barriers to remove. And nowadays what is happening is that you are making rules. Each time some airline gets into trouble, they're tweaking the rules for that airline. Air India got into trouble, so they made rules for Air India. Jet Airways got into trouble.
So it's all very ad hoc.
Very ad hoc. And third, we also need competition amongst airports. We have got great airports now. Earlier we had cow sheds, which were inefficient. Public sector, as you know, whether you look at the KEB here or the KSRTC, they're very shabby. While the public sector is inefficient and indifferent, the private sector, if it becomes a monopoly, it's a monster. Any private sector, even if it's Tata's or even if it is me, if it's the newspaper, the only newspaper or the only TV channel, we had only one TV channel, which was the Doordarshan. Then we had second TV channel. The first one you put on, you had Indira Gandhi. Second one you put on, you had Sanjay Gandhi. So then we had a flood of TV channels. Suppose you were to say there'll be no Doordarshan, but there'll be only one TV channel, Republic TV, for example, or whatever headlines today. Then your sector will not grow. That is from the point of view of the sector. It gives employment, but it's also not good for society and democracy. Same thing here. We need now, today, we had only one airport in Bangalore, which is the HLA. It served a purpose, but it was very inefficient and indifferent, both. Then they started a private sector airport, which is the Bangalore International Airport, which is an extraordinarily great airport. But they should not have closed the HAL airport. They should have had the new airport in competition to the new one. But they put a tender condition making people invest so much. They said, we can't invest if you have another airport. So not only they said HAL will close, they said there'll be no other airport within 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers of Bangalore, which is a shame. Airports must compete with each other. London, for example, has 6 airports, one city. Bangalore is a great city. Delhi is a great city. London has 6 airports, all competing with each other. Hong Kong has 5 airports within 100 kilometers of each other. And each of them are bigger than our airports. So we need to have competition. And the fourth is, when you think of airlines, aviation, what comes to you is airline. Airline is a glamorous part. But you have a whole lot of other components in the aviation sector, in the takeoff system. You need maintenance. For example, today, almost all our aircrafts are going for the major overhaul of engines and others. They're going abroad. Indigo doesn't get its aircrafts maintained here. It sends it abroad because it is cost prohibitive to maintain it in India. Because if you want to get any part from outside, then to get the part into the country and then get it out of the customs, still a license Raj. So you need to break all those barriers, not just for the airlines, because these are all the various other cogs in the wheel that makes the wheel stronger and turn faster. Similarly, the general aviation of the helicopters, because that is a breeding ground for pilots. Today, we don't have enough pilots in this country. Even today, with hardly this kind of a strength, we have a lot of foreign pilots to whom we are paying an arm and a leg, and they stay in 5-star hotels, and every 6 months they have to go back and come back again for their medical and things like that. So it's a very, very restrictive environment, not just for the airline, but all the other feeders that feed the airline eventually. The cargo airline, for example. Then the Hong Kong airport, for example, alone handles more cargo than all our 100 airports put together. So you need to look at the entire sector so that each strengthens the other and each feeds the other and makes it very strong. Today, for example, Nepal would rather send its engine or other parts for the aircraft maintenance. They'll send it to Singapore because he can send the engine to Singapore and get it back in 3 days. But if he sends it to India, to Delhi, which is just 1.5 hours, he won't get it for 1 month. So none of them, if he can make Nike shoes here for others, and if he can make software here for others, why aren't we not getting Lufthansa to send their aircraft to India for maintenance? Right? We are not getting British Airways their aircraft to India, because that will generate employment. And so last one is, we built great airports. Along with that, we had multiple airports in each city. But one more thing is that you need to make these big airports hubs, mega hubs. Because India is in the center between Middle East, Europe, and this side of Asia, China, and Japan. And even today, Emirates is probably the world's largest airline in terms of its bigness of size. If you sit on a flight in Emirates to go to Paris, it goes to Dubai and Dubai to Paris. Or from here to Dubai, Dubai to London, Dubai to Moscow. So they have created a mega hub there. So anybody who wants to go anywhere in the world, they choose Emirates because it has got easy connectivity. And so to Dubai itself, the number of people who go, maybe only 20% of their aircraft. Rest of the 80 go from there to Paris, and from Paris, then again they get down, and some go to Africa, North Africa, some go to Brazil, some go to USA, some go to Moscow. So the people who are going to Dubai are transit passengers. That's how they've created such a huge hub. And similarly in Singapore, and similarly in London. If you're going in British Airways, you get down in London, and from London you take another flight. All of them are not going through, 90% of them are not going through Air India. So we need to make our Delhi airport and our Bombay airport and our Bangalore, all these big airports, we have to make them into big hubs. There again, we do not have an open sky policy. We should open the skies of India and compete, and we can compete. Look at the automobile sector now. Initially they all were protective. They didn't want to allow others to come in, like the Bombay Club. We had only Ambassador car, you had only Bajaj scooters, you had only Mahindra Jeeps. Today, the Mahindra, for example, the new Mahindra, the young Anand Mahindra, he took on the challenge instead of going to the government and crying and say, give me protection. He has reinvented himself. Today, the total number of SUVs that Mahindra produces is more than the combined SUVs of Toyota and Renault and Kia and Tatas and Benz and everybody put together. He makes more SUVs than everybody put together. Similarly, Bajaj today makes scooters which are competing against the Kawasaki's. TVS is making scooters competing against Suzuki. They had a collaboration, but they got out of the collaboration, and today they're making great motorcycles competing with the best in the world. So we can compete with, so we have to remove all these barriers because Indians can compete and it's necessary for them to compete so that they produce better products, and monopoly will ultimately will kill the company. Ultimately, they may benefit today because of closeness to government, but in the long run, it will kill them because one day you will find that the world has moved on. So in many sectors, we are competing with foreign companies and we are doing better than them. So the government must open up comprehensively. Then only aviation will grow. So they have to open up our skies so that these big airports, which are now losing money, all of them are losing money. GVK was losing money. That's how he sold it to Adani. GMO was losing money. Finally sold it to got Air France. They're losing money because the airports are protected. They're charging high. And obviously, even the domestic passengers will come down.
So, Gopi, tell me if you're going to revive your airline business again in some form or the other.
Yeah, they say never again. But however, I have no wish to restart an airline right now. I mean, of course, I'm involved in the aviation sector as we have a charter company. So I'm doing something in that, some innovations there, something new. But definitely not an airline. It doesn't look likely.
Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the charter company? What are the innovations?
No, not yet, not right now. It's still buzzing in my mind, and we are looking at it. So let's see if it is in the conceptual stage. I think if it takes wings, then we will know it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Here's wishing you all the best with it.
Thanks, Sandhya.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spotlight with Sandhya as much as I did. Do subscribe to the podcast. I would love to hear from you. The links are in the bio below. I'll be back soon with another interesting guest. Until then, take care and bye-bye.